you go a lot of places all over the country, and when you say that you're Cuban, a lot of people don't know what that means, really. They don't understand the gravity of that for us. You know, like, we lost a lot of things about our culture, our people, our country. You know, my grandparents lost everything that they knew to come here to give us another opportunity. And there's people that have lost their lives, they've lost their freedom, they've lost so many things. And we're still living that today. And that is, to me, it's tragic that it happened and that it's happened. What's even more tragic is that it continues to happen and that people continue to turn a blind eye to it and pretend that things are getting better.
There's not an excuse for that. I mean, I know that you have very accurately said that it's a lot of information. I have touched a lot of points. Probably that's not a didactic way of doing this.
No, this is the perfect way to do this.
But we could make it very simple. I mean, here in the state, you have the opportunity to choose whoever is going to run the country. That's something that the Cuban people hasn't had in almost 75 years. There's not an excuse for that. There's not an excuse for preventing a nation, preventing a people from their right to decide.
Even that is true. We have an opportunity to decide who runs the country, but even more so, we can say when we don't like who runs the country.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
we can sit here.
We can open that door,
and we can trash all the people that we don't like. And I'm pretty confident in the fact that I'm gonna make it home.
Yes, you are.
We've done it a lot on this podcast.
We have done it several times on this podcast, and we will continue to do so. In Cuba, they can't do that. They can't openly say things and feel comfortable with their walk home. Oh, yeah. And that, to me, I can't even imagine, at least being the way that I am, the way that I like torch things that I think are wrong and I think that I'm incredibly opposed to. I couldn't imagine not having that freedom. And I have that freedom because my grandparents sacrificed everything to give it to me. And that, to me, is the greatest gift I've ever been given. And it happened way before I was even born. Mm-hmm. So it keeps on just like going in circles in my head, is the fact that people keep on saying that it's better. Things are better. Things are getting better. And they're just not. They are not getting better.
Are getting worse. And getting worse from any point of view. Are getting worse since the point of view of the radicalization of the regime and law. Are getting worse from the point of view of the quality of life of the Cuban people. I mean, the whole point of why we that are embedded in this fight for freedom had to make a donation drive was because the Cuban people is starving.
Well done, by the way.
Yeah, that was a good segue.
A good transition.
For you not doing podcasts very often, that was an incredible segue. I could not have done that better myself.
I'm probably going to start a podcast now.
Good.
In Spanglish.
That's good. Nick can do all the producing.
It was because Cuba is in crisis, but in a very serious crisis, in a humanitarian crisis. I mean, just imagine that the whole system, education, healthcare, infrastructure, transportation, everything collapsed. But they collapsed like 10 years ago, and they have been running like inertially, and now there is no any resource that the Cuban people could use. Right now, you are, if you're in Cuba, you are praying for your kids, your elderly, not to get sick, because if you enter to a hospital, you're probably going to leave the hospital sicker than when you enter. I mean, we are talking. I don't want to be graphic because it's very tragic, but you could enter to to an urgent care room in Cuba and find puddles of urine below the beds of the sick, of the people that is there. There is no food, there is no medicines, there is no water, there is no running water in many places in Cuba, and all this is taking place in the midst of the COVID-19. I mean, people is actually suffering, not just the lack of freedom, but the lack of freedom in the middle of a crisis, in which is dramatic for a mother, for a father, not to have anything to give to their children and not to have the possibility of do anything to change that situation. That's the most dramatic thing, and that's why with this donation drive and the reaction of the regime to the thousands of pounds of humanitarian aid that we sent and that we got to put in the Puerto of Mariel in Cuban Harbor was to block that humanitarian aid. And they have been arbitrarily retaining cans of food and medicine and hygiene products in the midst of a humanitarian crisis just because they don't want that the independent civil society and the Cuban churches, the Christian churches, to be the ones that actually distribute that humanitarian aid.
So I
want to get this. I want to get this completely straight. So, you guys started a drive for all kinds of products, health products, food, hygiene products, all those things. The world, in the last 8 months, has been in a worldwide pandemic. We have talked at length how the United States is in crisis. The United States is in pretty good shape compared to other parts of the world, which I don't know if people want to hear that or not, but it's true. Mm-hmm. So you guys, how much are we talking? Like, how much stuff, this drive, what did it produce exactly? Like, how many pounds of things?
Like 50,000 pounds of food and medicines and hygiene products, which is not a lot, but it's important to say that everything was collected in one day, and everything was totally citizen-led. There was zero money from government institutions, organizations. Everything was just put there by the people, by the community.
U.S. government. And then, so the idea was to send this to Cuba, and then for it to get distributed, how?
We, ahead of that, we talked with some religious leaders and also with some civil society leaders. And here I have to make a parenthesis. Civil society in Cuba.
I was going to ask you what that meant.
Yes. Independent civil society, which is usually an adjective that you don't use for civil society, but civil society should be independent. But in the communist regime, they are gongos that they sell to the international community as independent organizations that actually are in charge of repression. And there is the brave people that dare to live in truth and dare to organize themselves to help the people, and they are subjects of repression. Those kind of people were the ones that we talk with, and some of them are heads of the position, some of them are independent artists that were ready to distribute that humanitarian aid. So we created a network of religious leaders and independent leaders of the civil society that were ready to receive that humanitarian aid and distribute it among the people. Ahead of time, also, we created a website and invited the Cuban families to register with their name, phone number, and address to try to get those that actually need or that were in a more critical need for these products. Almost 15,000 families registered. Families, yes.
Okay.
And this is a very big number because what you still don't know is that the Cuban regime blocked our website a few hours after we put it out.